This video was originally demonetized and age restricted, so here it is re-uploaded with a lot less violence and some very creative censorship. Enjoy! Fallout 1 and 2 were released only on PC, back when knowing how to run a game on a computer was essentially a specialist skill. So although these games were popular in the PC gamer circles, their cultural spread was somewhat limited. It was only when Fallout 3 was released that the Fallout series became a household name. After this, everyone had heard of it. Even the objectively hilarious Conan O'Brien pretended to like it for a few more billion views.
There's a jet engine coming out his ass? Look at how muscular my ass is.
Both the Fallout games before it were made by totally different developers, and this third game followed that trend. And so I'm of course talking about the objectively amazing Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel.
Yeah, this is the real Fallout 3. Look, here's the timeline. Third. I asked for the game, but Emma got me the book. I don't know why.
Fallout Tactics is a lot like the original two games, but with a slightly fresh coat of paint. It follows a squad of the Brotherhood of Steel that was separated from the main group and is now stranded in the wasteland. Gameplay-wise, it's exclusively a tactical-based shooter. This means there isn't really any dialogue choices in this game. Instead of the speech skill, we have piloting. There is of course still dialogue, it's just we don't have as much control over the story as we usually would in these games. And some of the dialogue we do have is very 90s.
What's my boy doing with the Barbie?
I mean, dated views aside, you don't even seem to have a fucking dog.
The story that does take place is actually quite an interesting examination of the Brotherhood of Steel's role within the Fallout series. You see, at the beginning of... Wait. Oh, for God's sake! What? Where am I? What's going on? Who did this? Wait. What's that over there?
Hello, human. It is I, a mysterious stranger.
Sid, is that you?
No.
Sid, you're the only talking cat I know. I know it's you. You haven't even masked your voice.
Oh, hello, human. It is I, a mysterious stranger. Read this.
Ah. Well, I do love money.
When Fallout 3 first came out, I thought it was amazing. Sure, it's gained some notoriety now as somehow the very worst video game ever made, but it came out 13 years ago, you gotta cut it some slack. It's older than the cat that is currently holding me hostage.
Nowadays, this game is a little tricky to get running on Windows 10, so that's the first thing we're gonna do.
Getting Fallout 3 to work properly through Steam is genuinely an absolute nightmare. Bethesda, making a game that doesn't work properly? Windows 10 seems to be the main reason this game won't run, but the specific issues people have seem to vary wildly. For me, issue 1 in my cornucopia of errors was that the game simply wouldn't start. And after some digging, I found that this was because Fallout 3 requires you to have Games for Windows Live. What's that, I hear you ask? Well, Games for Windows Live, or GOFO, was an online gaming service used by Games for Windows. Was. If you're trying to play Fallout 3 through Steam, it simply won't run without this now non-existent piece of software. This is like a cookbook being distributed with its signature dish being roast fucking diplodocus. So after a significant number of tries, I found this fix, which lets you download the Games for Windows Live file that Fallout 3 is looking for.
It gives you the file. Why doesn't Bethesda just give us this file?
The thing is, this is widely reported on Steam, and it's completely ruining Fallout 3's reputation. I just can't believe Bethesda is ignoring this problem, and thus allowing their flagship brand to bomb quite so Oh wait, that's right. Even Windows seems aware of this problem and warns me every time I try to open the game that it probably isn't going to work. Are you sure you want to do this, man? I just care about you.
Oh, hi. Me again. Just here to quickly say that this problem was fixed last month. 7 years Fallout 3 hasn't worked on Steam, and it was fixed 1 week after I finished my commentary. Did they do this on purpose? I think they're onto me.
This isn't anything new, by the way. If I open up Skyrim VR without first turning on my VR controllers, the game simply won't work and I have to reboot all of Steam. And right now, Fallout 4 is so poorly optimized, playing it is like watching someone smear 2 playthroughs of the game together. Anywho, this fix meant that I could now play long enough to see the opening of the game, which is yourself being born.
Are you a boy or a girl?
See, this is what happens when you let Liam Neeson deliver your baby.
I'm your daddy, little guy. I'm your daddy.
You decide how your character looks, leading to the uncomfortable arousal of your own mother.
Oh, very strapping.
And it turns out to be so overpowering she immediately dies. It's hardly any surprise though, Bethesda have always been really weird about killing family members we barely met.
Stranger.
You're wheeled away while Liam Neeson provides life support and the game crashes to desktop. Oh good. A soul-sucking hour of troubleshooting later and I found this guide that suggested a few different fixes. The one that was causing my issue though is that I shouldn't have been running the game in full screen mode. Well, isn't this much more immersive? So it fixed the crashing and I was finally able to watch myself grow up in Vault 101. Notably, you get to experience your 10th birthday party and I must admit it's all very immersive.
Oh, hi! You may think I'm crying about the game, but no, I'm locked up at a subterranean vault, remember? Also, I just found this saw. Bollocks.
So after another little search, I found that Fallout 3 can be prone to freezing whenever you're inside any building. Look, I'm not going to question it, it's fine. Open the INI files, change this to this, add this, and the problem's fixed.
The good news is that that's actually it. The game, for me at least, now only crashed every few hours. I would complain that that's unacceptable or something, but I'm a little busy.
As I said, the first few hours of this game are dedicated to you growing up in an underground vault, safe from the nuclear wasteland. And I love it. Fuck you. You grow up with your dad, voiced by Liam Neeson, and since he's the main driving force of the story, it actually makes a lot of sense that we spend a decent chunk of time with him. Sure, he's so two-dimensional I'm worried that any moment he might collapse under the weight of his own hair, but what can you do?
Take care, sweetie. Now get out of here, and good luck.
Bye, Dad. One day your father escapes from the vault, and as a result, the overseer, Mr. Nazi McNaz's son, issues your death warrant, because, I don't know, it's time for combat to start. Fortunately, your friend Amata finds you and gives you a gun to protect yourself.
Even with that pistol, I don't think you'll win a fight against the whole security force.
Oh, Amata, you innocent thing. I warned you all not to take me on! So we, peacefully escape. Walk out into the wasteland and catch our first glimpse of the real world. And from this point on, the entire game is open to you. You can go literally anywhere on the map. And my complex thoughts about this can be summed up by plagiarizing Bo Burnham. Welcome to the wasteland. Have a look around. Any living things with brains to blow up can be found. We've got miles of train tunnels, some better, most worse. If empty rooms don't interest you, you definitely wouldn't be the first. Welcome to the wasteland! You know, I'm going to stop there because of copyright issues. Now, before you all fucking murder me, hear me out. The first place I went to was Megaton, which, you know what, is a great location too, okay? Bam, I like it here. It looks just like the sort of place that would crop up in a post-apocalyptic world filled with garbage. Now, I will admit, finding your way around here is a bit of a challenge, but otherwise it gives us some of the game's most memorable characters and set pieces. We eventually meet Moira, who's the main quest giver in this area, and she sends us off to collect some landmines. We don't have any other pressing things to do, so we of course accept. And basically she tells us to travel from here to here. So off we go on our first journey. Now on the surface, this expedition we go on is fabulous. The visual style and soundtrack in this game work together to create a delightful atmosphere. In this scene, I'm pouring a bottle of chewable toothpaste capsules into my mouth. They tasted terrible. Just like Skyrim, this game perfectly captures the wonder and thrill of exploration, and that's not an easy thing to achieve. But this game is so open and so incredibly large. Just look at all these locations you can visit. Look at them! Is it realistically possible that all these places are worth visiting? No. Sorry, the short answer is no. The long answer is fuck no. In the walk to get these landmines, for example, I stumbled across and explored in their entirety Springvale School, Scrapyard, Bethesda Ruins, and the NDPL Power Station. And I tell you now, none of these locations have a single character you can talk to or quest you can receive. Yes, there's a dog, but he can hardly hold a conversation. I mean, he is a really good boy, though. Okay, Springvale School is a slight exception, as it has one computer terminal, but it contains nothing more than a few lines of disappointing dialogue that quickly lead you to a dead end, and that's it. it. These areas I named are some of the closest to where you start in the game, and yet there's almost nothing here. On a related note, I would really like to meet the programming team so mature that they were able to insert the ruins of their own offices into a video game and not fill it with notes and computer logs passive-aggressively shaming their fellow colleagues. When I was in my office job, I was genuinely told I couldn't bring a fan into work because it might upset the other employees. And so if I was developing a game, I would have hidden a skeleton under a table, named it Jump Is Not Up, and left him with a single note that reads, "Died of heat stroke after someone let him steam to death in his company-enforced tie and blazer. Thanks, Marjorie." In Fallout 2, practically every grave you find has a message like this from the developers. "Here lies T.D. Hamilton, a stank hoe that should have been dead a long time ago."
Sounds like whoever wrote that wasn't allowed any air conditioning either. Am I right? I'm surely going mad.
The point I'm trying to make here is at least 50% of all the locations in this game have practically nothing in them. Usually it's just enemies to kill, loot to find, and skill points to collect. And because loot really is the primary reward for exploration, before I'd even seen a fifth of this game, I had in my inventory 13 mini nuclear warheads, which are this game's equivalent of opening up the console command bar and typing kill all. Look at them go. What have I done? Most of the time you're only exploring so that you can kill enemies, which means you can loot more ammo for the singular purpose of killing more enemies. It means Fallout 3 quickly becomes this perfect Mobius strip of bullshit. And speaking of an inescapable loop of purgatory, the level design in this game is awful. It's fitting that this game is filled with empty locations, because the buildings too are packed with empty rooms. Why does Bethesda Ruins need to have so many empty bathrooms? What are you trying to tell us? The interiors of buildings are far too open plan as well. This single hallway in Springvale School branches off into 11 different hallways and rooms, so it's impossible to keep track of where you've been. And this would be fine, but the map system doesn't account for this at all. Most locations in this game have 2 or more floors, yet the maps themselves are always compressed into a bird's eye view of a single 2D image. This wall, it could be anywhere. First floor, second floor, the void between dimensions where the living and dead coexist. However, when this game came out, I think its hugely open-ended exploration actually worked incredibly well. Now this is because the more you traveled, the more unique places you saw and unique enemies you discovered to interact with. There are ghouls, feral ghouls, glowing ghouls, slavers, super mutants, centaurs, Brahmin, mole rats, deathclaws, giant ants, rad scorpions, raiders, aliens, sentry bots, Mr. Handies, robo-brains, fucking Shaft. You never knew what the game was going to awkwardly segue to next. The drawback was all the Fallout 2 fans, you know, all 7 of them, who played Fallout 3 when it came out, knew that none of these ideas were particularly original. Every one of those creatures I just named are from the previous games. There's no denying that Bethesda has adapted these ideas into the third dimension incredibly well. All these creatures look amazing, but there's no depth to any of them. You just break their legs and enjoy their slow descent into the barrel of your gun. Hello, Darkness, my old friend. Take the robo-brains, for example. In Fallout 2, you travel through an entire research facility, uncovering all the terrible experiments being done there, and it all culminates in a puzzle where you perform brain surgery, eventually merging man and machine in a horrible abomination of science and nature. Commands. Probably shouldn't have done this. This event alone has discovery, intrigue, context, challenge, a reveal. And how are they introduced in Fallout 3? Is that a robot with a human brain? Stand back. I'm going to make first contact. America! There's basically no context given to most of the enemies in this game, and given how focused it is on combat, it's a huge misstep as you have no reason to dislike any of these creatures. Like, who the fuck are the Talon Company?
I hear that you could have been useful. Ah, well, time to die. No, I don't think so.
That interaction there is the absolute perfect microcosm for almost all the enemies you meet in this game.
You want to buy slaves, and I want to sell them.
Okay, thanks for clearing that one up. The Talon Company is literally everywhere, and the only context I could find on them was this woman, Riley.
Those fucks went into a settlement a year or 2 ago and killed everyone. Women, children, everyone. That's the sort of crap Talon Company does.
Well, that's a unique trait, except for the Raiders, Slavers, Super Mutants, Enclave. But don't worry, the Talon Company is different. They wear leather armor, which is perfect for repairing mine. In a game so much better, I'm surprised it hasn't spawned its own fucking religion. You learn that there's a military group called the NCR who in one skirmish killed numerous innocent women and children. This all occurred at a raider settlement called Bitter Springs, but as you look into it, you find that this event is shrouded with misinformation. Even people who were at the battle give entirely different accounts of what happened. Some say the NCR's long fight with the raiders caused them to snap. Others say they misinterpreted military intel. You quickly realize it's not going to be easy to know who to trust, let alone side with. Bitter Springs acts not not only to shed moral ambiguity onto basically everyone you meet in this game, it encompasses the overarching theme of New Vegas and Fallout as a whole, which is in one way or another war taints all that it touches, even those who seem to be trying to end the violence. All you can do in this game is analyze the conflicting perspectives of those involved and make your own mind up on which flawed ideology to support. Oh god, it's just so fucking delectable! So, Fallout 3, right? Bitter Springs alone demonstrates how Fallout 3 has no real overarching goal or tangible themes. War never changes. This has no real bearing here, it's just a juicy line written by a different development team. Who in Fallout 3 encompasses this statement? Him? Sure, there's a lot of miniguns and everyone's dirty all the time, but the pure chaos and extreme open-ended nature of Fallout 3 doesn't allow any faction within it to feel like it has any meaningful goal. Oh god, look at me. I started talking about Fallout New Vegas and began comparing it to another game, like comparing the Sistine Chapel to that time Sid peed on the rug.
Because it reminds you the gravity of your situation, human. Uh-oh.
Now you might think after all that I don't really like Fallout 3, but actually I think it's really good. I probably should have started with this part. Sure, I have quite a few complaints, but between Fallout 3's avalanche of empty locations and forgettable factions, it has some of the best side quests I've ever played in a video game. There's a town filled with genetically modified fire-breathing ants with a mad scientist.
Those monsters, they're gonna get me.
An area overrun by deathclaws, a society of cannibals now turned vampires, a town menaced by an insane superhero and villain, a talking tree that quite understandably requests not to be set on fire. No, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Why do I always do this?
My favourite location in possibly the whole game is the Dunwich building. You see, on its surface, this building is just an empty location with a bunch of ghouls to kill. It seems no different to the other 100 empty buildings this game has. But quickly you see there are several audio logs scattered around that captures someone's final hours here. You also witness a flashback, there's a door that swings open on its own. Even the lighting in this area is different from the rest of the game to fit the tone they're going for. It really creates an incredibly compelling atmosphere.
It's warm against the stone. I'll just rest a while.
But best of all that was needed to achieve this was a few simple ideas and 3 or 4 minutes of voice acting. And that's the beauty of it. You can spruce up any dingy basement with some color correction and a few spooky set pieces. I couldn't be bothered to add any more. This location shows you how much better Fallout 3, and kind of Bethesda games as a whole, could be with a little bit of redirection. You see, Bethesda has it. You know, it. They clearly had the creativity to make Fallout 3 truly incredible. But I think due to some very poor fundamental choices, they missed the mark. And these are fundamental issues. Contrary to what you might hear, this game can't be fixed by mods that, I don't know, touch up the mannequins. You leave her out of this. If they had just focused on putting a couple dozen less of these humongous, sprawling, empty buildings and elaborated a little bit more on the good ideas they already had, the game would be worlds better. If you comb through this game, I believe it already has enough great content for it to be a near masterpiece. I just can't fucking find any of it half the time because it's hidden between all the derelict metro tunnels, drive-in theaters, abandoned towns, sewers, caves, boats, power stations, radio stations, relay stations, train stations. The combat in this game is also really good. Yeah, I said it. Sure, the guns are impossible to aim. I mean, look at this. Look at it. One bullet went here and another one over there. It's all well and good, but this is the best assault rifle in the entire game, and I have a gun skill of 100%. And don't worry, I know. Oh, actually, that's how machine guns work. I should know, I have 24 of them. Look, as someone with an acceptable concentration of lead in their bloodstream, I'm no expert on firearms. But either way, this makes the rapid-fire weapons in this game completely useless at medium to long range, which really means they have no use at all, because at close range, you might as well do this. I can't show you any of this. Oh my god, it's really violent. The thing is though, this doesn't really matter because there are so many other weapons in this game and they're all so incredibly varied and fun to use. Without even nearly mentioning all of them, there are pistols, silence pistols, sniper rifles, shotguns, dart guns, machine guns, submachine guns. Okay, yeah, I can see that's a lot. Plasma rifles, lasers, laser rifles, alien blasters, missile launchers. Nuclear warhead launchers, miniguns, flamethrowers, a hypnotizer, 10 different types of grenades and mines.
That's all of them, right?
Axes, swords, blades, knives, chainsaws, bats, clubs, shovels, a sword that's on fire, a rifle that can pin body parts to walls, a giant metal fist, a giant claw.
Now, I have always wanted a giant claw.
Too late, human.
I've really got to get out of here soon.
Most of these weapons interact with enemies completely differently, so you can have fun for hours on end just messing around with them. Why must the empty face hole of a Mirelurk haunt my dreams forever? People apparently dick on the rocket launcher, but honestly they're nothing more than degenerate scum. To elaborate, the rocket launcher is a gun that can be loaded with pretty much any object you can find out in the wasteland. So normally finding this bag of yeast would obviously be a pretty boring event, but now, don't thank me, it's the yeast I can do. Yeah! This varied selection of weapons, combined with the fabulous VAT system, means that although exploration itself can get pretty sparse at times, the combat usually stops it from ever getting too boring. Of course the combat in this series is great, it has to be. How else would Fallout Best Vegas be the pinnacle of all creation if it wasn't? Fallout 3's story certainly is a mixed bag, one that contains half the Holy Grail and the other half James Corden's autobiography. In this story, you need to find your missing father. Then once you do that, you need to help him de-irradiate all the water in the wasteland. And that's the gist. To do this, we need to explore a few different locations, and I'd say the first half of the overall story is pretty good. For example, when you do eventually find your dad, he's hooked into a virtual reality simulation controlled by a mad scientist whose only goal is to torture its inhabitants to gain some kind of existential satisfaction. His name is Stanislaus Brown, yet he spends all his time disguised as a little girl.
Certainly not what I had anticipated.
It's great! To be fair, there's not a lot to interact with once you join this reality, but what makes this experience fun is Braun himself and his motivations. He's been given some really great depth beyond just being a madman. For example, it seems that this simulation was once actually a ski resort, and you can find one of his diary logs from that time. Yesterday, Dithers slipped on the chalet's icy stairs. She went airborne and managed to impale herself on the wrought iron fence. It was spectacular and completely and utterly random.
I respect all cultures equally highly.
Is there anything more sublime than bold crimson on fresh fallen snow? He talks all the time about being sick of creating specific torturous events for the people unknowingly trapped here. He longs for a more organic or creative suffering for them. It's clever. I like it. I'm a normal person. But then the story asks you to explore other places like Rivet City, and honestly, I'd rather just eat rivets themselves. I'll take my award to go. Rivet City is a grey boat with doors, or as I like to describe it, Door City is a grey boat with rivets. Another zinger. There isn't really anything here of consequence beyond this fucking laboratory, but over 40 people seem to live here, none of which have any more depth than the pool of grease on a cheap oven pizza.
Alright, Matt, maybe you need to dial it back a little bit, you know? We're gonna upset some people here.
90% of the quests here just ask you to find character X and regale them with inane fact Y. But the layout of this boat is completely ridiculous. Not only is every part of this place fucking identical in every way, but there are dozens of hallways, and in total they consist of 33 separate doors. It takes less than 10 seconds to walk the entire length of this boat. Why are there so many doors? If someone asks you to find someone else, as they inevitably will, because that's the only type of quest this fucking boat offers, you'll have to walk across every single corridor on a floor, checking every single door you come across, hoping you'll strike it lucky and have the name of the person you're looking for eventually appear in front of you. But no, you'll inevitably be on the wrong floor, so you have to navigate through 2 more doors just to get to the next floor so that you can enter the same long, empty corridor to check the names of another dozen people you haven't even met yet, only to find the door, enter, and see they're not even home at the moment, so instead their room is actually filled with, I don't know, aliens. That'd be more interesting, wouldn't it? Also, of these 33 doors, 15 of them have loading screens associated with them. And if you're playing on the Xbox 360, these take 9 seconds to get through. This means if you were to go through every single door in this tiny location just once, it would add up to over 7 minutes of loading time. But it won't just be once, will it? Because not only is this place a maze of nonsensical navigation, you need to come through here at least twice just to finish the story. Oh goody, I can't wait to enter the marketplace. I see how it is. Geographically, the marketplace is right behind this wall, but there's no direct way to get to it, is there? So you have to go outside and go back in again. This means it takes over 20 seconds just to go to one... Look, no, it's fine, I'm over it. Clearly I'm over it. And it's a shame because wrapped up in this awful place is a side quest called The Replicated Man, and it's genuinely one of the many highlights of this game. This quest is so good, in fact, Bethesda took it in its entirety, stretched it out so thin I'm surprised it didn't slip into a lower dimension, and repackaged it as another $60 sequel. But we'll cover that in the next decade.
Overall, then, this game has some ups and downs, but generally, I think it's pretty good. I stand by my man. However, the last 5 hours of this game... divine.
The final act of this game is so utterly terrible. So inexcusably awful. It actually dips into being pretty good. It's like the uncanny valley or something. You just can't look away as you feel your retinas burning their way through your skull. Basically, just as you're about to finally fix all the water in the wasteland, the main antagonists of this game, the Enclave, turn up and kill your dad. Liam Neeson, dying in a work of popular culture. Bethesda, you did it again. Part 5, who the fuck are the Enclave? In Fallout 2, the main antagonists are the Enclave, just like in Fallout 3. And they are subtly introduced throughout the entire game by means of hidden cutscenes and hushed conversations. All in all, they were pretty hard to miss, but most of the time you still felt like you were chasing shadows. In Fallout 3, the Enclave are introduced to you the very second you start the game by means of a radio broadcast they themselves are putting out. So from the word go, you can listen to their evil leader talk about how he's evil and stuff.
I've been thinking quite a bit lately about something we can all relate to. I am referring, of course, to our great national pastime, baseball.
Naturally, I turned this radio station off and never listened to it again. I admire Bethesda's balls throwing the main antagonist our way within the first few seconds, but we don't see or hear from them again for another 20 hours or so, and barely anyone in the game even talks about them. When the Enclave turned up and killed my dad 13 years ago during my first playthrough, I genuinely had no idea who these people were. Oh no, not my dad, we had such a connection. So what are you guys, like the Talon Company or something? And I think someone at Bethesda was aware of this, because when the Enclave do suddenly appear out of thin air, the sewers are conveniently packed full of radios on full blast, all playing the Enclave radio station. Remember, it's those guys from 20 hours ago at the beginning of the game. We have no idea what we're doing. From here, though, the wheels don't just come off. The car fucking detonates. You are captured by Colonel Autumn, who died earlier alongside your dad. Now, given the rest of the plot in this game, I genuinely thought Autumn being alive here is just a plot hole. But I've since learnt before he dies, he does seem to inject himself with his own wrist. Clever girl. Which must be how he survives. So Autumn captures you and then later on revives you.
So, you're awake.
Jesus Christ, what am I doing? Autumn revives you in what seems to be the Enclave base. Well, it is the Enclave base, and asks for the code to start Project Purity. We tell him we don't know, and thus begins a battle of wits, the likes of which the world has never seen before or since.
You lie.
He fucks off, and the president, who's in charge of the entire Enclave, asks you to come and meet him. You leave your cell and immediately encounter the horrifying amalgamation of every single one of Bethesda's voice actors.
You're supposed to be in that holding cell. You're not going anywhere.
If I had a sister, I'd sell her in a second.
What are you talking about? It's yours if you bring my claw back.
Please, get away from me. It's amazing, this guy voiced half of every Bethesda game. Anyway, sorry. I worked my way towards the president, murdering everyone in the base, and no one even seemed to notice. I genuinely started to feel a little bit bad towards the end. Eventually I made it to the leader of the Enclave, the sentient supercomputer, the President of the United States, John Henry Eden. This has to end, Eden. You need to destroy yourself and this base.
Perhaps you're right.
I'm sorry, what? Immediately after meeting Eden, I was offered 3 separate options, all of which lead to him inexplicably committing suicide. In the first option, you ask him to, like I've just shown you, and he complies. The second method is to convince him using science. You can't be president. You're an abortion of science. You need to die.
Really? Do go on.
Only a human can be president, not some computer.
Go on.
Shut yourself down. Shut this whole place down.
Self-destruct sequence initialized.
Oh, come on, man. At least try and fight back. And the final way to win is 2 rooms prior to this one. You find a code in a footlocker that if you say it to him, he will start his self-destruct sequence. Who wrote this? Convincing this advanced supercomputer not to kill himself and everyone else around him is genuinely the real challenge. Just for context, John Henry Eden is a self-aware AI that has spent the last 200 years learning how to govern by studying in depth all of the past actions every president of the United States has ever made. Oh, I get it now. It all makes sense! What in the world was Bethesda thinking? Talking your way past the final boss in Fallout 1 was so difficult, working it out was basically an Easter egg. So after my miraculous escape, we visit the Brotherhood, who are basically the goodies in this game, and we convince them to help us finish off what's left of the Enclave. They of course agree, and we all leave to take them on. I mean, this is a little awkward. I don't know if this is really the time for this. Oh, for God's sake, now what's happening? What makes this event even better is this is basically a cutscene. There's only one way in and out of this room, so Lions will always go this way, and Forks will always be standing here because he literally joined my party 30 seconds ago as part of the main story. How did this happen? How did they get this so wrong? You then fight the Enclave in the street. You don't really have an impact on this sequence as Liberty Prime, the bringer of all destruction, does all of the work. I guess you have to hand it to the Enclave. They really aren't scared of certain doom. We eventually make it back to Project Purity and once again bump into the bastion of intellect that is Colonel Autumn.
You again.
You again.
You again?
You again?
Why do people keep saying you again? Just walk away. It's not too late.
Very well. How can I be sure you won't just shoot me once I turn my back on you?
Well, you're just gonna have to trust me.
Guess I shouldn't be surprised that you just let him walk away. It's amazing the world hasn't beaten that out of you.
We then go to Project Purity, but to activate it, someone has to enter the chamber filled with radiation from earlier. Fortunately, a few hours ago, we met the all-knowing divine entity that is our true Lord and Savior, Forks. I fucking love you, Forks. Being a super mutant, Forks is practically immortal, so we send him in to deal with this tough situation.
No, I'm sorry, my companion, but, no.
Forks, what are you doing? Everyone's looking at us, Forks. I told these guys you were cool. So Forks adamantly refuses to save the day. But it doesn't make any sense. This exact contrived scenario literally happened about an hour ago when he offered to enter a high radiation chamber for us to gather the Gek. Why doesn't he just do this again? Through it all, though, I of course stay calm and gently voice my opinion to him. Yeah. I bet you feel bad. So I enter the chamber, realize I have no idea what the code is to start the purifier, and I die, leaving the world the exact same way I found it, just like in real life. End. 2 out of 10. Don't see me. But you know what really squirrels my stick? What really refines my punger fruit? When you complete Fallout 1 and 2, you are told over a series of still images the specific impact your adventure across the wastes will have on the world. As a basic example, in Fallout 1, there's a group of raiders that you encounter early on. If you let them all live, the ending of the game includes this cutscene.
The desert raiders pillage most of the northern parts of New California. They are a scourge that lasts for years.
Now this of course will change if you decide to kill the raiders, but what's so clever about all this is not only do you feel responsible now for letting the raiders go, it makes you want to play the game again differently. It fleshes out the game world. It makes you feel like this world existed before you and will exist after you. And best of all, it requires very little work to do this beyond a few lines of voice acting and some stock imagery. Honestly, I always thought Fallout 3 did have an ending like this, but it doesn't. It just tells you some garbage about what an asshole you are.
But the child refused to follow the father's selfless example.
And then the game ends.
I said doing what Fallout 1 and 2 did would be easy, so I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and do it for Fallout 3. Bring it on.
Following the deactivation of the bomb in Megaton, several of the children of the apocalypse left in search of other perilous icons. These outcasts eventually settled at what is known as the West Tech Research Facility in California, where they ultimately perished, wreathed in its glow. With Harold's death, so too died his influence. As the years passed, the forests of the oasis faded, and the tree minders with their lush fields were passed down as nothing but myth. The synth known as Harkness was returned to Dr. Zimmer by the Lone Wanderer. Yet on their long journey back to the Commonwealth, they were ambushed by more compassionate souls, and Harkness was once again reclaimed as a free man. The Lone Wanderer killed almost 450 Talon Company mercs, but they were still everywhere in the wasteland. It's almost as if no one gave them any thought at all. The only thing that really changes the ending of this game is whether or not you activate the purifier at the end, which I, of course, didn't do.
But the child refused to follow the father's selfless example.
Selfless! I didn't know what the password was. I still fucking died.
Could I interest you in everywhere, all of the time? A bit of everywhere, all of the time.
As I've said, and probably a little bit too much detail, this game does have a lot of flaws. Sure, the animations can be a little bit iffy.
Oh my god, it was so romantic.
And quite a lot of the time, everyone seems to be talking at once. But I genuinely think there is enough unique and interesting content in here to still say it's a great game. Worth literally the hundreds of hours we've all spent playing it. I'd say overall that the game's biggest flaw is that it's so open-ended that developers couldn't possibly predict what skills or items the player was going to have at any one time, and thus they couldn't design locations or levels accordingly. Not once did I find an area that was a real challenge. Well, except maybe one. Or that I'd need to come back later to with better equipment. You can basically experience any part of this game from the word go. And although that is very exciting, it also means that you very rarely get a sense of achievement for the things you do. Too often this game ends up boiling down to killing all the enemies, collecting more numbers, or just crossing locations off on a map.
And there we go, that's Fallout 3. Overall, still a pretty good game if you ask. What? How did I escape? Well, I mean, it was a cat holding me hostage. I'm hardly gonna let a cat boss me around, am I?
Seeing you again really makes me wish for a nuclear winter.
And there we go, that's the proper ending. And remember, if you want to get one of these SID pins, you just need to become a $10 patron or channel member now. The details of how to receive the pins will be listed in those areas. Thank you all for watching, and oh, I have merch as well if you're not into pins. I don't know, salesmanship. Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this little remake.